E. On selling one's business. Most business owners spend the better part of their lifetimes building their businesses. By experience built upon endless repetition, they sharpen their skills in merchandising, purchasing, personnel selection, etc. It's a learning process, and mistakes made in one year often contribute to competence and success in succeeding years. In contrast, owner-managers sell their business only once, frequently in an emotionally charged atmosphere with a multitude of pressures coming from different directions. Often, much of the pressure comes from brokers whose compensation is contingent upon consummation of a sale, regardless of its consequences for both buyer and seller. The fact that the decision is so important, both financially and personally, to the owner can make the process more, rather than less, prone to error. And mistakes made in the once-in-a-lifetime sale of a business are not reversible. Price is very important, but often is not the most critical aspect of the sale. You and your family have an extraordinary business, one of a kind in your field, and any buyer is going to recognize that. It's also a business that is going to get more valuable as the years go by. So, if you decide not to sell now, you are very likely to realize more money later on. With that knowledge, you can deal from strength and take the time required to select the buyer you want. If you should decide to sell, I think Berkshire Hathaway offers some advantages that most other buyers do not. Practically all of these buyers will fall into one of two categories. 1. A company located elsewhere, but operating in your business or in a business somewhat akin to yours. Such a buyer, no matter what promises are made, will usually have managers who feel they know how to run your business operations and, sooner or later, will want to apply some hands-on help. If the acquiring company is much larger, it often will have squads of managers recruited over the years in part by promises that they will get to run future acquisitions. They will have their own way of doing things, and, even though your business record undoubtedly will be far better than theirs, human nature at some point caused them to believe that their methods of operating are superior. You and your family probably have friends who have sold their businesses to larger companies, and I suspect that their experiences will confirm the tendency of parent companies to take over running of their subsidiaries, particularly when the parent knows the industry or think it does. 2. A financial maneuver, invariably operating with large amounts of borrowed money, who plans to resell either to the public or to another corporation as soon as the time is favorable. Frequently, this buyer's major contribution will be to change accounting methods so that earnings can be presented in the most favorable light just prior to his bailing out. This sort of transaction is becoming much more frequent because of a rising stock market and the great supply of funds available for such transactions. If the sole motive of the present owners is to cash their chips and put the business behind them, and plenty of sellers fall in this category, either type of buyer that I've just described is satisfactory. But if the seller's business represents the creative work of a lifetime and forms an integral part of their personality and sense of being, buyers of either type have serious flaws. Berkshire is another kind of buyer, a rather unusual one. We buy to keep, but we don't have, and don't expect to have, operating people in our parent organization. All of the businesses we own are run autonomously to an extraordinary degree. In most cases, the managers of important businesses we have owned for many years have not been to Omaha or even met each other. When we buy a business, the sellers go on running it just as they did before the sale. We adapt to their methods rather than vice versa. We have no one, family, recently recruited MBAs, etc., to whom we have promised a chance to run businesses we have bought from owner-managers, and we won't have. You know some of our past purchases. I'm enclosing a list of everyone from whom we have ever bought a business, and I invite you to check with them as to our performance versus our promises. You should be particularly interested in checking with the few whose businesses did not do well in order to ascertain how we behaved under difficult conditions. Any buyer will tell you that he needs you personally, and if he has any brains, he most certainly does need you. But a great many buyers, for the reasons mentioned above, don't match their subsequent actions to their earlier words. We will behave exactly as promised, both because we have so promised and because we need to in order to achieve the best business results. This need explains why we would want the operating members of your family to retain a 20% interest in the business. We need 80% to consolidate earnings for tax purposes, which is a step important to us. It is equally important to us that the family members who run the business remain as owners. Very simply, we would not want to buy unless we felt key members of present management would stay on as our partners. Contracts cannot guarantee your continued interest. We would simply rely on your word. The areas I get involved in are capital allocation and selection and compensation of the top managers. Other personnel decisions, operating strategies, etc., are their bailiwick. Some Berkshire managers talk over some of their decisions with me, some don't. It depends upon their personalities and, to an extent, upon their own personal relationship with me. If you should decide to do business with Berkshire, we would pay in cash. Your business would not be used as collateral for any loan by Berkshire. There would be no brokers involved. Furthermore, there would be no chance that a deal would be announced and that the buyer would then back off or start suggesting adjustments, with apologies of course, and with an explanation that banks, lawyers, board of directors, etc. were to be blamed. And finally, you would know exactly with whom you are dealing. You would not have one executive negotiate the deal only to have someone else in charge a few years later, or have the president regretfully tell you that his board of directors required this change or that, or possibly required sale of your business to finance some new interest of the parents. It's only fair to tell you that you would be no richer after the sale than now. The ownership of your business already makes you wealthy and soundly invested. A sale would change the form of your wealth, but it wouldn't change its amount. If you sell, you will have exchanged a 100% owned valuable asset that you understand for another valuable asset, cash, that will probably be invested in small pieces, stocks of other businesses that you understand less well. There is often a sound reason to sell, but if the transaction is a fair one, the reason is not so that the seller can become wealthier. I will not pester you. If you have any possible interest in selling, I would appreciate your call. I would be extraordinarily proud to have Berkshire, along with the key members of your family, own blank. I believe we would do very well financially, and I believe you would have just as much fun running the business over the next 20 years as you have had during the past 20. Sincerely, Warren E. Buffett. Our acquisitions usually develop as referrals from other managers who have sold to us in the past. At other companies, executives may devote themselves to pursuing acquisition possibilities with investment bankers, utilizing an auction process that has become standardized. In this exercise, the bankers prepare a book that makes me think of the Superman comics of my youth. In the Wall Street version, a formerly mild-mannered company emerges from the investment banker's phone booth able to leap over competitors in a single bound, and with earnings moving faster than a speeding bullet. Titillated by the book's description of the acquiree's powers, acquisition-hungry CEOs, Lois Lanes all, beneath their cool exteriors, promptly swoon. What's particularly entertaining in these books is the precision with which earnings are projected for many years ahead. If you ask the author banker, however, what his own firm will earn next month, he will go into a protective couch and tell you that business and markets are far too uncertain for him to venture a forecast. Here's one story I can't resist relating. In 1985, a major investment banking house undertook to sell Scott Fetzer, offering it widely, but with no success. Upon reading of this strikeout, I wrote Ralph Shea, Scott Fetzer's CEO, expressing an interest in buying the business. I had never met Ralph, but within a week we had a deal. Unfortunately, Scott Fetzer's letter of engagement with the banking firm provided it a $2.5 million fee upon sale, even if it had nothing to do with finding the buyer. I guess the lead banker felt he should do something for his payment, so he graciously offered us a copy of the book on Scott Fetzer that his firm had prepared. With his customary tact, Charlie responded, "I'll pay $2.5 million not to read it." At Berkshire, our carefully crafted acquisition strategy is simply to wait for the phone to ring. Happily, it sometimes does so, usually because a manager who sold to us earlier has recommended to a friend that he think about following suit.